And a very pleasant good morning to you wherever you may be. A little after 10 o'clock on the East Coast, 7 a.m. here on the West Coast. Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports podcast. Big Saturday doings going on. Coming up to NCAA football, a little NBA, a little NHL to talk about. But we start with the World Series. Thanks to everybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for joining us. If you missed this early edition of the VPartySports podcast, brought to you by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. We'll replay the episode coming up right at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock in the East and 8 o'clock. So you don't miss the best bet segment. You don't miss all the action that's going on. You don't miss all the information you need for all your wagering purposes, all your fantasy football purposes, just all your viewing purposes in general. As we said, the VPartySports podcast brought to you by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio. We'll be live from the Brit tomorrow, downtown San Jose. If you're in the area, come on down, 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll do a live show. If you mention the podcast, the VPartySports podcast, you get 10% off your entire bill for NFL Sunday ticket action. All right, last weekend, the NCAA, the favorites were 17, 29, and 1 this past weekend. So we'll see if that trend changes. Get more favorites. You'll see in the best bet segment that we have. Tonight, however, the World Series starts up again. Game 6 after a day off in Philadelphia where the Astros took 2 out of 3. They have a 3-2 series lead. Framber Valdez and Zach Wheeler, a rematch of Game 2, will go at it. Zach Wheeler, the last time he pitched, gave up 2 home runs to Kyle Tucker, who was my pick to click, by the way, in this World Series. Justin Verlander was good on Thursday night, but the first win ever in the World Series. He was 0-6 going in. Syndergaard had pitched one World Series game. That was in 2015, and he ended up losing the game. It was a 3-2 game. Phillies had chances to score, but they couldn't do it, and so therefore the Astros have a 3-2 lead. The bullpen has been very good for Houston. We'll get to that in a second, but 3-2. Of course, the World Series had the no-hitter on Wednesday. Christian Javier, Brian Abreu, Rafael Montero, and Ryan Presley closed out the last 3 innings for that Houston bullpen for Javier, who went 6 innings. Christian Javier was outstanding, had not given up a run in his last, I think, like 15 or 16 innings to talk about it. But anyway, the World Series is 3-2 going into Game 6. The Philadelphia Phillies on the verge of elimination. Dusty Baker with a chance to get his first ring. All right, we'll delve into it a little bit here. First of all, the World Series line is the Houston Astros are -141. The total is 7 under. Both pitchers pitched pretty well. It was a 5-2 game and ended up right on the number in Game 2 last Saturday night. 8:03 Eastern on Fox, 5:03 on the Pacific time zone, and 7:03 for you folks in the Central time zone, including Houston. The Phillies win, then Game 7 Sunday night. Dusty Baker, the Houston Astros manager, with the first chance to get his first World Series ring. How about Jeremy Pena? Jeremy Pena, the rookie shortstop. They let Carlos Correa walk before the beginning of the year to let him go to Minnesota because they had a kid named Jeremy Pena in the minors. What did he do? Well, in the playoffs, if you remember what he did in Seattle, he broke the scoreless tie in the 18th inning with a 1-0 victory in Game 3 to sweep Seattle. He leads all World Series players. This rookie shortstop who's playing pretty good defense, but offensively, he's there. 8 hits for Jeremy Pena to lead all the players. Altuve, Gurriel, Pena, all over 300. Harper, Bohm, about 250. They're walking Harper a lot. Alec Bohm has come through with some big hits. The fact the Phillies have 2 wins against this bullpen is kind of surprising. But Jeremy Pena leading all players in the World Series with 8 hits right now. The Astros bullpen, we said, has been solid. Only 2 earned runs in 17 and a third innings. That translates out to a 1.04 ERA. That includes the no-hitter, the 3 innings they threw in the no-hitter. 2 earned runs in 17 and a third innings. One of the runs came in the blowout, of which they lost 7-0. And then the other one came in the 8th inning of Game 5 when Segura singled home a run to make sure that that game got closer to 3-2. But the Astros bullpen has been solid. Pena leading with all hits. As we said, the line 141 for Houston with Valdez. He was awesome. 6 1/3 last week of really good baseball. Let's see if I can find the box score here before we get out of the baseball segment. But Framber Valdez was outstanding. In fact, he's 141. I know a lot of people want to see a Game 7 I'm pretty sure that let me get this first here. When you don't have a producer, Game 2, Framber Valdez, 6 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run. He walked 3. He struck out 9. Whereas Wheeler, 5 innings, 4 earned runs. He gave up runs early. Three first inning runs, including the Kyle Tucker home run, and then another to Tucker in the 5th as well. So it's a matter of seeing. Bregman had the big double. Bregman had the home run in Game 2. The Astros started off Game 1 with the Kyle Tucker home run. So actually, let me get this right here. The Tucker 2 home runs were in Game 1. Bregman in Game 2 had the big hit that stretched the lead out. They won 5-2. Of course, Tucker had the 2 home runs in Game 1, but the Phillies came back from a 5-0 deficit and went on to win 6-5. But here we are, Game 6. As we said, Game 6 tonight. In Houston, Zach Wheeler and Framber Valdez. Wheeler 1-2 overall in the playoffs, 2.67 ERA. Valdez 2-0 in the playoffs, 1.42. The World Series win Game 2, able to lead the Astros to that. All right, big bet for today as far as the best bets go for the MLB. Even though both pitchers have been pitching well this postseason, my best bet for the MLB is the Philadelphia Phillies Houston Astros to go over 7. Just got a feeling that Zach Wheeler, because they're on the verge of elimination, that they're going to have a tough time not going to the bullpen early, especially in an elimination situation. The Phillies bullpen has not been as good as the Astros bullpen, and I just got a feeling that Houston at home, after winning 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia, going to have a shot to take off. Get some runs off that bullpen if, in fact, they get the lead. Philadelphia, if they get the lead early, they'll be able to score some runs, and I think the over 7 is probably the best bet in the MLB. All right, when we come back, we'll hit college football. A full day of college football. We'll give you our best bet segment. Don't forget that we'll replay this episode again so you don't miss the best bet segment right at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Don't forget about the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. Mention the podcast and receive 10% off your bill during the Sunday ticket. We'll be there live. At the Brit Sports Pub and Patio tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 Pacific. The live broadcast of the VPartySports podcast brought to you by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio. We'll be there for an hour. We'll do the show live at 9:30. You can catch it if you're not in the area on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. All right, back in a minute. Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports podcast. Philadelphia Phillies, Houston Astros over 7 tonight. Hopefully it extends to Game 7. Not sure it will, but the over will be there at 7. Vasu Vaddiparty here. The VPartySports podcast will be back in 1 minute to get to the NCAA football action all day long. Big games in the NCAA. We'll get to all of them as we continue on the VPartySports podcast. Welcome back to the VPartySports podcast. I'm your host, Vasu Vaddiparty. 17 minutes after the hour on the East Coast at 10 o'clock. 17 minutes after the hour on the West Coast at 7:17 a.m. But we got to get up early. We got to get this done so you have all the information you need for a big Saturday of college football. Don't forget, tomorrow, live from the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. Join us live for our weekly podcast to preview all of the NFL Week 9 action. We've already had a game on Thursday night. The Eagles took apart the Houston Texans. They are at 8-0. We'll get you all the details on the NFL tomorrow. We'll give you the big trade deadline acquisitions. Miami went all in as for the Dolphins, as did the Philadelphia Eagles, a few other teams, and we'll recap the entire draft. But don't forget tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern, online on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube at VPartySports on Twitter and on Instagram, and then on Facebook, Vasu Vaddiparty, on YouTube, Vasu Vaddiparty as well. 10% off your entire bill if you mention the podcast and you come down, watch all the NFL Sunday Ticket. A lot of good football tomorrow, and we'll see you there. 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific online. And then inside the restaurant, you'll hear us for the first half hour. Then Jasper and the staff, the owner of the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, will turn it over at 10 o'clock for the game so you don't miss any of the action. We'll continue online for the rest of the show at that point. All right, just to recap the World Series, 3-2 up for the Houston Astros after their 3-2 victory in Game 5. Verlander got his first win ever in the World Series. He was 0-6 coming into Thursday night. Syndergaard pitched well, went 3 innings, but was tagged with the loss after the Astros scored early and often. Game 6 tonight, the line is Houston 141. The total is 7. The under is favored by 125. So you're going to get plus 105 if you took my best bet. I had the over at plus 105. For Valdez, who was outstanding in Game 2. Zach Wheeler, who gave up a few runs early, took the loss in Game 2 last Saturday night. 8:03 Eastern, 5:03 Pacific. On Fox, 7:03 for you folks in Houston as well. The Phillies win. Then we get Game 7 on Sunday night. Dusty Baker with a chance to get his first World Series ring with one more win. If they win tonight, that series will be over. The Astros bullpen has been solid. 2 earned runs, 17 in the third innings, 1.04 ERA, including finishing the no-hitter in Game 4. How about that rookie, Jeremy Pena? 8 hits, leads all the World Series players. So they're on a roll right now. They've won the last 2. The pitching's outstanding. Get enough offense. But I think, as we said, the best bet for the baseball tonight, the over 7. Philadelphia and Houston over 7. I think there'll be some runs scored. 5-3 victory. Don't know who's going to win. Hope Philadelphia wins. But if Houston wins, I think they're going to score enough runs. It's going to be over Valdez and Wheeler, the starters. But I just got the feeling it's going to be over inside climate-controlled conditions down in Houston. All right, we move on now. We move on to college football. How about the college football day that we've got? NCAA action, obviously topped off by the big game between the Hedges in Georgia. Athens, Georgia, the site today for the Tennessee Volunteers, ranked number 1 by the BCS committee, take on the Georgia Bulldogs at number 3. Now, Georgia averages less than 10 points given up this entire conference season, about 9.8. Tennessee is averaging 44 points in conference. The line, as we see it right now, is Georgia favored by 9.5. Can that defense stop the Tennessee offense? I don't know. We'll tell you in our best bet segment. But right now, I just got a feeling that it's going to be the matchup of the year, and whoever wins will obviously have a leg up. A lot of teams, a lot of people complaining that are out of the SEC, saying that it's possible that 4 SEC teams could end up 1-4 in that powerful conference. But Tennessee, Georgia, highlight the day. Speaking of the SEC, number 6 Alabama, they're going to visit LSU. LSU with a big win over Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. They're number 10 in the BCS rankings. Alabama number 6. That's a big game tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern from the Bayou. Alabama comes in with the returning Heisman Trophy winner quarterback Bryce Young. Jadavian Kelly, the quarterback for LSU, he's played well. His running game is as important as his passing game. 2 big games in the SEC will highlight it. Ordinarily, Alabama-LSU would be the marker game of the season based on the years past, but Georgia-Alabama taking that spot today, the defending national champions hosting the Volunteers between the Hedges down in Athens, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State, not to be forgotten. They're about a 38.5-point favorite. They're going to Northwestern, another conference play. So I got a feeling a perfect storm is going to happen for Ohio State. Their defense is going to come through. Northwestern, outside of that big win against Nebraska, overseas, they haven't won on U.S. soil. They've had a rough go of it since the win over Nebraska. That either says something about how bad Nebraska is or how bad Northwestern is, because those 2 teams opened up the year in Ireland, I believe is where it was. And Northwestern with a big win as an 11.5-point underdog. But they haven't won since then. They're 1-6, and now they've got to face the juggernaut in Stroud, C.J. Stroud, that wide receiving core, the running game, that defense that came back on Penn State last week, did Ohio State. A 38-point favorite, 38.5-point favorite at Northwestern. And then number 4, Clemson at Notre Dame, highlighting the top 4 teams. Clemson in the Dabo Swinney era has won 3 out of 4 against Notre Dame. I believe that line, as I scroll down here, I believe that line is 3.5 for Clemson. It's moved up to 4, the total 44. Notre Dame with a big win on the road at Syracuse last week, dropped Syracuse to number 20. We'll hit all the top 25 games coming up in a second, but here are the top 4 teams that are playing. Tennessee will visit Georgia. They are, scroll up here, they are a 9.5-point favorite. I saw, 9.5-point favorite. The total 65.5. Tennessee scores 44 a game. Georgia gives up about 10 a game. You think Tennessee will be able to score on the Georgia defense? Boy, 9.5 on the road. That's a lot for a road team, especially with the quality talent. And don't forget Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for Tennessee. He's a Heisman Trophy favorite as well, too. But that Georgia defense moves fast, moves quick, moves laterally very well, moves vertically very well. Their secondary has been outstanding. Their pass rush to the quarterback has been terrific. So it's going to be a tough battle for Tennessee. Remember, they gave up a lot of points to Alabama at home. They were an underdog at home to Alabama. They ended up winning that game, but they gave up 40 points. They only gave up 6 to Kentucky last week, but Kentucky's offense not as good as Alabama's offense is right now. So that's your 4 teams right now, the top 4. Moving on to the top 25, Michigan will be at Rutgers, and I believe they are, let me see here, let's get this right here. They're going to be at Rutgers. Michigan will be at Rutgers, 7:30 Eastern on the Big Ten Network. Michigan favored by 26 on the road. Rutgers 4-4, Michigan 8-0. They are 5th in the BCS rankings right now, so we'll see how they fare as a 26-point favorite. Rutgers will run the ball. Defense has been pretty solid for them all year, but this is Michigan, and Blake Corum coming in at running back, having a shot to run all over that Rutgers defense. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the point output for Michigan, but right now Jim Harbaugh's crew on a roll. Number 7, TCU. They'll be at noontime this afternoon, right after we get off the air. Whether you watch this live broadcast or the replay, TCU hosting Texas Tech on Fox. TCU 8-0. They are an 8-point favorite. They're number 7. A lot of people think TCU should be moved up. A lot of people think Michigan should be moved up ahead of Clemson. A lot of people think TCU should be moved up ahead of Clemson as well, too. But they sit at number 7 right now. They host the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. How you doing, Patrick Mahomes? 8-point favorite for TCU as we get to it. TCU, the total, I believe, is 69 is the total for TCU. The Ohio State game is 38, as we said. And we'll get to the other lines in a second. But number 8, Oregon is a 31-point favorite at Colorado. That's 3:30 Eastern. ABC will have that. Oregon's been on a roll. The only loss they've had has been versus Georgia this year. So that increases their BCS chances right now because their quality loss is to what most people think is the number 1 team in the NCAA right now, the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 9, USC, also in action. They have the game against, where are they here? They have Cal tonight. Excuse me, everybody. Early morning. They're hosting Berkeley. Is USC at number 9. 3-touchdown favorite at home. 10:30 Eastern on ESPN, 7:30 on the West Coast. USC has given up a lot of points this year, evidenced by the Utah game, evidenced by Arizona that they played earlier. They gave up 16 points to them. They've also had other games this year where they've given up some points. In fact, let's go through it right now. They gave up 28 to Stanford. Stanford with the cover there. Stanford did not cover that game. They have 17 to Fresno State, 14 to Oregon State, 25 to Arizona State, 14 to Washington State. They gave up 42 to USC, and they gave up 37 to Arizona. So the last 2 games, they've given up a total of 80 points. You'll see Cal can put some points on the board. But you got to think that USC, a 3-touchdown favorite, may have the choice here. All right, when we come back, we'll go through the conferences one by one. We'll give you some betting lines here, and we'll give you our best bets for college football. Back in 30 seconds, Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports podcast, sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. Don't forget, we'll be live there, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But if you come in, watch the NFL Sunday Ticket, mention you heard the podcast, get 10% off your entire bill. All right, back in 1 minute, I should say. We're going to take a 1-minute break for the VPartySports podcast and back with more college football as we return on this Saturday morning, early on the West Coast, 28 minutes after the hour. The VPartySports podcast, sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. Welcome back to the VPartySports podcast, brought to you by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. Check us out on Sunday live from the Brit in downtown. If you're in the Bay Area, it's by the arena near San Jose State University, right on Santa Clara Street, 173 West Santa Clara Street. Come in, mention the podcast. All day Sunday during NFL Sunday Ticket, receive 10% off your bill. All right, we hit a little college football, as we said. Tennessee, Georgia, the big game today between the Hedges and Athens. Alabama, LSU, the other SEC game going. Ohio State, number 2 at Northwestern. And then Clemson at number 4 will visit Notre Dame. Michigan, TCU, Oregon, USC also in action. Also in action, the number 17 UNC Tar Heels, North Carolina Tar Heels. They've got a noon game. They're a 7-point favorite at Virginia. North Carolina can put points up. Virginia, we've seen, has a good defense. It's going to be tough for North Carolina on the road to get past Virginia at a 7-point spread because of that defense. But if North Carolina can run the ball, they've got a shot to put some points up. Mac Brown's team has put a lot of points up this year. Number 20, Syracuse at Pittsburgh. We just said Pittsburgh is a favorite. They've got number 20, Syracuse, who lost to Notre Dame at home last week. They did not play well, and they're still in the top 25 rankings as far as ACC teams go. Florida State at Miami. Oh, what was once a great game is no longer. Florida State at Miami used to be a good rivalry. Miami struggling on offense. Florida State visiting there. And then a pretty good game. North Carolina State at number 22 will host Wake Forest. We know Leary's out for North Carolina for the rest of the year. They played well against Virginia. They had to come back against Virginia, 22-21, covering a 13.5-point spread. Wake Forest, a 3-point favorite going into this game as well. All right, we move on to the Big 12, other Big 12 games. Number 16, Oklahoma State visits Kansas. Kansas with a win today. They're a 1-point favorite over Oklahoma State, who's given up 1,000 points, it seems like, the last few weeks. A 1-point favorite with a win today. They will be bowl eligible. Remember where Kansas was a few years ago? Unbelievable, the transformation. And Lance Leopold, the coach of Kansas, should be getting a lot of nominations for Coach of the Year because of what he's done with that KU program. They're 1 win away. Of course, they don't have their quarterback. They've been going with the running game. Defense has given up a few points. They're a 1-point favorite, but Oklahoma State has given up 1,000 points, as we said. It seems like the last few weeks in their losses to Texas and to Kansas State, where they got shut out badly by K-State last week. I think 48-0 was the final. And the final Big 12 game, we have number 24 Texas visits number 13 Kansas State. Kansas State coming off that big victory over Oklahoma State, 48-0. They're at home, still not getting the respect. Texas, a 2.5-point favorite. They've got Bijan Robinson, who was a Heisman candidate, probably still is at some point, but he can run the ball. K-State can stop him. They've got a shot. They've got a shot to go after Quinn Ewers and that good pass rush that Kansas State has. Also, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Oklahoma, another game in the Big 12. That's on ESPN Plus. It's on digital. Oklahoma State, a 3-point favorite against Baylor. Baylor, who came off a big win last week. All right, we move on to the Big 10. Minnesota and Nebraska. Minnesota can be bowl eligible. They've got 5 wins. Nebraska's been awful. We said that 14.5-point favorite is Minnesota, 44.5. That's at noon Eastern. A win by Minnesota, they become bowl eligible. What a job they've done. What a job they've done the last few years, picking up the pieces from what was once a not so good program to where they are now in the Big Ten. Of course, they're not going to be Ohio State. They're not going to be Michigan. They're not going to be Penn State, not for another year or two. But right now, they're trending upward, and they've got a big game at Nebraska, 14.5-point favorite. Nebraska can score a little bit. See if they can cover that 14.5. Minnesota has a tough time scoring. It'll be an interesting game that goes at noon. Iowa at Purdue, very interesting game for Purdue. Purdue's offense has been really good. Charlie Jones, their wide receiver, has been spectacular. Iowa's defense has been terrific, but they can't score very much. And I believe that Iowa's a 3.5-point underdog. They are 39.5 the total for Purdue and Iowa today. Maryland at Wisconsin, also a noon Eastern game. Wisconsin, a 5-point favorite against the Maryland Terrapins. We know about Tua Tagovailoa's younger brother there at Maryland. 49 the total for Wisconsin. They haven't scored a lot of points in the last few weeks, but they did get a blowout win a few weeks ago against Purdue, where Purdue just looked awful, and Wisconsin's pass rush got to them. So we'll see if they can get to Tagovailoa today as a 5-point favorite against Maryland. Number 15, Penn State. Number 15, Penn State will be at Indiana. They're a 13-point favorite. They're playing the IU Hoosiers on the road, 13-point favorite. Of course, we saw them blow that lead against Ohio State, 28 fourth-quarter points they've given up. ESPN has them at 84% to win, but Indiana, considering quarterback change, Penn State's defense, Penn State's pass rush, 13.5-point favorite might not be enough for Indiana, but that's a tough place to play. They've had some good games there already. Shout out to the IU fans. Basketball season coming up as well. Illinois taking on Michigan State, 16-point favorite versus the Spartans. Last week, the Spartans put on a good show against University of Michigan. Unfortunately, the suspensions that they're going to have, 4 suspensions for the game. Mel Tucker announced that on Monday after the fight in the tunnel between the two rivals, Michigan and Michigan State. All right, let's move on to the Pac-12. Pac-12, Washington State will be at Stanford. Stanford having a tough time scoring. Washington State got off to a good start. They beat Wisconsin early in the year. They're a 4-point favorite at Stanford. Number 14, Utah will host Arizona. They're a 17-point favorite. They are, let me see, let's make sure I get this right here. Utah at 7:30 Eastern is a 17.5-point favorite over Arizona. Arizona got 35 points, scored 35 points against USC. Utah's defense much better. They just came off that win over USC with the 2-point conversion to beat them at the buzzer. So Utah with a chance. Hopefully, they're trying to figure out how to get into the conference mix-up as far as the Pac-12 championship game. A look at the standings here. Oregon and USC. Oregon 5-0, USC 5-1, UCLA 4-1, and Utah 4-1. So those 4 teams battling out. Utah 17.5-point favorite over Arizona. Speaking of number 12, UCLA, they visit Phoenix. They take on the Arizona State Sun Devils. They are an 11-point favorite at Arizona. They're coming off wins the last few weeks. They lost to Oregon 2 weeks ago, but they put it on Stanford last Saturday, 38-13 victory. Dorian Thompson-Robinson having himself a good year, the 5th-year quarterback moving that offense up and down. And defensively, they haven't played very well. They've given up 31 to South Alabama, 32 to Washington, 32 to Utah, 30 to 45 to Oregon before shutting down Stanford at 13 points. Arizona State, then Arizona, then USC, and then they go to Cal to close out the season on Thanksgiving weekend. All right, so we move on from there. The Pac-12 obviously has a lot to say here. They're trying to get into the top 10. Right now, USC the best chance at number 9 to move up in the rankings. All right, the SEC now. We already talked about Georgia, Tennessee. We already talked about Alabama. Here in the SEC, Kentucky, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas, all with 5-3 records, all trying to become bowl eligible. Very interesting scenario in the SEC if they all become bowl eligible the first time in a long time. Tennessee 4-0 in the East, LSU, Mississippi, Alabama, all 4-1 in the West. Kentucky at Missouri, that's a pick-em. Missouri coming off a big win last week over South Carolina. Texas A&M 5-3. They host Florida. They're a 2.5-point favorite. Texas A&M 3-5. Florida 4-4 as we go into it. And then Auburn, Mississippi State 12.5 over Auburn. Auburn went through the coaching change last week. They've been getting manhandled all year. And Mississippi State has a pretty good defense. Mike Leach with the air raid. He's taking it out on Auburn. South Carolina, Vanderbilt. South Carolina at 5-3. They're a 6.5-point favorite at Vanderbilt. But of course, the big games, as we said in the SEC, are the Tennessee-Georgia game between the hedges. Tennessee 9.5-point underdog. Alabama, we haven't gotten to Alabama. Alabama 13.5-point favorite at LSU. So very interesting doings in the SEC. And finally, the Mountain West, Air Force at Army, New Mexico State at Utah State, BYU at Boise State. Boise State ranked. Boise State not ranked, but they're an 8.5-point favorite. They're 6-2. Right now, they're leading the Mountain West in the Mountain Division. They're 5-0. Fresno State, San Jose State, both tied 3-1 atop the West Division atop the West Division. But Fresno State with the victory over San Jose State, they've got the edge in terms of the conference championship game. BYU at Boise State, UNLV, San Diego State, Colorado State, San Jose State. The big game for San Jose State. They're a 24-point favorite. My alma mater. Let's go. Let's get that victory. And hopefully Hawaii can go into Fresno and take care of business from a fan standpoint. Let the Spartans be back up top in the Western Conference of the Mountain West, Western Division of the Mountain West Conference. All right, best bets for the NCAA. And we'll give you a couple of them right now. First of all, in the early window, TCU -8. I like them over Texas Tech. I think TCU, Max Duggan has shown that he can run that offense. Defensively, they've got to notch it up a little bit. Texas Tech can score a little bit, but I think 8 points is enough for TCU. Tough to take these favorites sometimes in these early windows, but TCU -8, I think we'll get it done. We spoke about Texas A&M. They're 3-5, but a 2.5-point favorite. They gave Alabama a run. Florida has given up a lot of points, so Texas A&M -2.5. The later window, the best bets here, the Panthers 4 over Syracuse. I think that they can run the ball well. Defensively, they played okay. They played Tennessee tough at home. They didn't cover. They lost in overtime to Tennessee. They lost by 7, to Tennessee on the last second touchdown by Hooker. But -4, I think that running game will get going. Michigan State, even without their 4 suspended players, they're going to go into Illinois. Number 17, Illinois. Number 16, Illinois, having a 16.5-point spread. Offensively, Illinois struggles. Michigan State can put points up on the board. I know they had a tough time against Michigan, but they were in that game until the fourth quarter. They were able to cover that 23.5-point spread. So I think they'll do it again, 16.5 points versus Illinois. West Virginia in the Big 12, they're going to Iowa State. Iowa State has had a tough time scoring this year. Both teams at 3-5, 6.5-point favorite for Iowa State. I think Slovis will get the job done for West Virginia, +6.5. All right, the big one in Georgia. There you have it. The Georgia Bulldogs -9.5 over Tennessee. Got a feeling that Georgia at 9.5 is going to take apart Tennessee as well. All right, that's it for the best bet segment right now. We'll have more college football, and I'll recap it at the end as well. But when we come back, we'll talk a little NBA. We'll talk a little NHL. We'll recap Friday night, some exciting NBA action. A few games in the NBA today. We won't spend too much time on it because it's a big college football Saturday, but we'll give you our best bet segment for the NBA as well as some NHL talk as well. 2 hat tricks last night in the NHL, one overseas and one in Carolina. We'll get to that in a minute. The VPartySports podcast will be live from the Brit Sports Pub on Sunday. Sports Pub and Patio, 10% off the entire bill during NFL Sunday Ticket. If you come in, you watch the NFL Sunday Ticket, you mention you heard the podcast, you'll be able to receive 10% off your entire bill, and that includes alcohol as well too. We'll be there 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. We'll take care of everything that needs to be done NFL wise. We'll give you all the injury reports for fantasy football. We'll give you all the lines and totals for the Week 9 continuation of the NFL. All right, Vasu Vaddiparty here, the VPartySports podcast. We'll be back in 1 minute with some more best bets, some NBA and NHL talk. Thanks to everybody on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for tuning us in this early morning. Welcome back to the VPartySports podcast, brought to you by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. We're there every Sunday with a live NFL broadcast. We're going to preview Week 10 of the NFL. Don't forget to come down tomorrow, watch our show live. If you mention the podcast, 9:30 to 10:30, and all of the NFL Sunday Ticket, you get 10% off your entire bill during the NFL Sunday Ticket. Big Week 9 action. We'll have all the previews, all the fantasy football ramifications, lines, totals, previews of all the games, both early and late. Not a lot of late games tomorrow, so get on the podcast tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. All right, let's recap what we talked about a little bit. The Houston Astros 141 on the total, a win tonight. They will win the World Series. They're 141-7 under the total. Framber Valdez, who was outstanding in Game 2 versus Zach Wheeler in a rematch, 8 o'clock Eastern on Fox, 5 o'clock on the West Coast. 7:03 Central Time for you folks in Philly. Philly wins, then Game 7 Sunday night. Dusty Baker with a win in these next 2 games, a chance to get his first World Series ring as a manager. I like the over in this game, over 7 for the Phillies and Astros. I think there'll be some runs scored as we get to it. All right, recapping the best bets for the NC2A. TCU -8, Texas A&M -2.5, Pitt -4, Michigan State +16.5, West Virginia +6.5. Georgia, -9.5. The big game today between the hedges. I think Georgia's defense is too much for Tennessee. 9.5-point favorite. They're going to go with that. Boise State, -8 over BYU. BYU had a tough time scoring. LSU +13.5 against Alabama. They're at home Saturday night in the Bayou, Saturday night at the Swamp. LSU +13.5. All right, we move on to the NBA now. Yesterday, the NBA, 4-8 with the favorites. A lot of dogs yesterday. And the unders, defense starting to play better here. Seen a lot of points scored, but 4-8. I think the totals are set too high in the totals for the NBA and the overs and unders right now for the NBA, so they're not getting to the 220s like they did a few years ago. 4-8, the overs and under. 8 games Saturday, but let's go back to Friday here real quick. Donovan Mitchell sat out for the Cavs, but it didn't stop them from blowing out Detroit. They win 112-88, a 24-point victory for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are now 7-1. 7-1 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They trade for Donovan Mitchell. He's done everything that they've done for him. They sat out yesterday, but they still had the defense. Mobley, 88 points they give to the Detroit Pistons. They're 7-1. Tyler Hero misses a game-winning three-point shot for the Heat. They lose at Indiana 101-99. Heat have been kind of inconsistent. They're 4-6 so far. Indiana 4-5. The New York Knicks beat the Sixers 106-104. No Joel Embiid for the Philadelphia 76ers. He's still battling some kind of illness. The Sixers are 4-6. They lost to Washington earlier in the week, and now to the Knicks on Friday night. The Knicks are 4-4, playing much better than before. Celtics beat the Bulls 123-119. How about DeMar DeRozan? He did everything he can to keep the Chicago Bulls in it. 7.5-point underdogs. One of my plays yesterday. They cover. They lose by 4, 123-119. DeRozan, 46 points, was 13 of 23. 13 of 23 from the field, 20 of 22 from the free throw line. He was the only one that took free throws all night for Chicago. The only other free throw shooter was Zach LaVine, who went 2 of 3. But 22 of 25, 88% shooting, just enough to keep the cover versus the Celtics. Had a 14-point lead. Chicago came back, made it a 1-point game. But in the end, the Celtics end up winning the game. Celtics are now 5-3. Bulls are 5-5. The Mavericks, not the Mags. I don't know what happened there, but the Mavericks. Let me do this here. I'll do this real quick here. Live producing on the air. How about that? The Mavs beat the Raptors by 1. They don't cover the -4. Warriors 0-5 on the road trip. 4 starters sit and lose to the Pelicans, but they cover a 10.5-point spread. The Raptors covered their 4-point underdog spread. The Bucks remain undefeated. They blow out the Wolves by 13. Giannis Antetokounmpo, a triple-double, 26 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists. Lakers get blown out by the Jazz. And then in Phoenix last night, the Blazers blow a 13-point lead, but get a game winner from Jeremy Grant, who for a 108-106 win over the Suns. Both teams are now 6-2. Blazers still missing Damian Lillard. He'll be out for another week or so. Jeremy Grant's game winner gave him 30 for the game. As we said, the NBA favorites 4-8. Over-under is 4-8 as well. 8-game Saturday. Those of you that saw my post last night, the Brooklyn Nets beat up on the Washington Wizards 128-86. In that game, Kevin Durant had 28. Nick Claxton at center, 18 points for them. Watanabe off the bench, 14. And also Thomas off the bench, 17 as well. Cam Thomas out of LSU, 17 points off the bench. Nothing really going for the Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal, you know what he does, 20 points for him. And Kyle Kuzma had 19, Porzingis 14. But that was it for 86 points. I just wanted to make a note here that all of a sudden the Nets, is it coincidence or is it not coincidence that the Nets win by 42 points on the first day of Kyrie Irving's suspension? So hopefully this rallies the team back. Steve Nash, a good guy, got the axe last week. Interim coach Jacques Vaughn. They're looking at Ime Udoka, who took the Celtics to the NBA Finals last year, to possibly be the next coach. But Jacques Vaughn, the interim coach right now. Of course, Udoka suspended for a year by the Celtics internally. Doesn't leave him. It doesn't matter. The NBA didn't suspend him, so he's free to go coach where he wants to. He can leave the Boston Celtics, which apparently he will do and go to the Nets. But I find it very funny and very interesting coincidence that the Brooklyn Nets won by 42 at Washington as a 3-point underdog on the day that Kyrie Irving's suspension started. So maybe the team will click, maybe the team will connect. We'll see what the status is for Kyrie Irving, but management has suspended him for at least 5 games for his remarks, for his tweets. Obviously, the book and the movie that he's promoting didn't go over very well with the Jewish community and people in general as far as hate speech. So we'll see if Kyrie Irving gets back on the court anytime soon, but it's at least 5 games, and there has work to be done there for the Brooklyn Nets star guard Kyrie Irving. But in the meantime, they didn't miss him. 42-point victory, 128-86 over the Wizards. All right, a couple of NHL notes here real quick before we get to our best bet segment for the NBA, and then I'll recap the best bet segment for NCAA football and the World Series. Sebastian Aho, a hat trick for the Carolina Hurricane, 5-3 win over Buffalo, and then Nico Rantanen in Finland with a hat trick leads the Avs to a 6-3 win. The Global Series, they'll play each other again 2:00 Eastern today in the Global Series. 14 games Saturday. As I was looking at the standings in the NHL, we'll get to more NHL games after football season, and probably during the week we'll get to some football games. But right now, the Boston Bruins are 10-1. They're playing outstanding defense. They're plus 22 goal differential. They've only given up 28 goals in 11 games. The Carolina Hurricane 8-2 with that victory last night. They are plus 7. They're on a 4-game winning streak. These are teams to look out for. The New Jersey Devils are 8-3. Dallas is 7-3. Winnipeg 6-3 in the Western Conference Central Division. My Blackhawks are 5-4. They got a big win over the Kings the other night. When they're a big underdog, look at the Blackhawks in terms of maybe taking them. And then in the West, to the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights are 10-2. They played outstanding defense. They've only given up 23 goals in 12 games, so a little less than 2. They're plus 17. They're on a 6-game winning streak. So right now, the Vegas Golden Knights and the Boston Bruins are leading the West and East conferences separately in the NHL. We are about, let's say we're about 20, 22 games in, so about a quarter of the season done. All right, best bet segment to review before we get out of here. Don't forget, we'll replay this right at the top of the hour. We'll go up till about 10 minutes till kickoff, as we're about 70 minutes away from kickoff in NCAA football tonight. Tonight, World Series, Game 6, Philadelphia down 3-2. Framber Valdez, Zach Wheeler to the Houston Astros. I think the over 7 in the Philadelphia-Houston game. I think it's going to go over. Philly wins. We get Game 7 tomorrow night. Nothing like a Game 7 in any sport. Houston wins. Dusty Baker gets his first World Series ring as a manager, and they'll win the series 4-2. Pena, outstanding at rookie shortstop, has led the way for the Astros. The bullpen has led the way for the Astros as well, too. Only 2 earned runs in 17 and a third innings pitched. Pena, the big story. Altuve, Gurriel also hitting. Altuve had a tough postseason, but this World Series, he's hitting well. All right, moving on to college football. Big games all across the country. The big bets early for me. TCU -8 over Texas Tech. Texas A&M -2.5 over Florida. Pitt -4 over Syracuse. Michigan State will cover 16.5 against Illinois, as will West Virginia versus Iowa State in Big 12 play. The huge game, Boise State -8, LSU plus 13.5. That's one of the 2 huge games. LSU 13.5 at home in the Swamp versus Alabama. And then the big game between the Hedges and Athens. Can't emphasize this enough. I'll be in front of a TV somewhere. I don't know where I'll be, but Georgia hosting Tennessee. Hendon Hooker, a leading Heisman candidate, put up 44 points for Tennessee last week versus Kentucky, averaging about 44 points a game. Georgia's defense around 10 points a game allowed. Their offense has been pretty good. They had a tough time a few weeks ago. They gave up a few points. In fact, let's go through it here real quick. But I like Georgia. I like Georgia to cover the 9.5. I think Georgia's defense is too strong for them. They gave up 20 to Florida. They shut out Vanderbilt. They only gave up 10 to Auburn. Missouri got 22 points against them. So Missouri showing some offensive light there. They almost lost that game, and that could have turned this whole season around. They gave up 22 to Kent State, but shut down South Carolina. And ever since then, so in conference play, 22, 32, 52 in 4 games. So about 13 points in conference in the last 4 games Early in the year, they beat up on Oregon. Oregon red hot right now. Turned out to be a quality loss. So TCU, Texas A&M, Pitt, Michigan State, and West Virginia. Georgia at 9.5 over Tennessee. Boise State -8. LSU plus 13.5. The NBA, Atlanta, the Hawks -1 today. They are -1 over the Pelicans. Check the injury report. Check who's in and out. I believe if it's -1, you got to think that maybe they're going to sit some guys today. But the Pelicans coming off their victory versus the Warriors last night. It's going to be tough to play back-to-back, but they're going in. Check the injury report right now that I think about it. Trae Young day-to-day, Bogdanovich out. No injured players for the Pelicans, so that's a 1-point favorite. But I think at home, Atlanta playing well. They're 5-3. Pelicans are also 5-3. Atlanta -1. Milwaukee's remains undefeated. They are 8-0. They're a 7.5-point favorite versus the Thunder. They blew out the Timberwolves yesterday. Looking at the Bucks right now, no major injuries. Antetokounmpo, he was day-to-day, but he comes out with a triple-double. I think they continue the roll. 7.5-point favorite over Oklahoma City tonight. And then Phoenix and Portland playing each other again, back-to-back days in Phoenix again. Phoenix did not cover 12.5. Jeremy Grant with the game-winning bucket at the buzzer after the Blazers blew a 13-point lead. But Jeremy Grant, without Lillard, the main scoring option for the Blazers, he had 30 last night, including that game winner from about 15 feet. By the way, look at that highlight. Looked like he traveled to me. He may have gathered. That's the NBA term. But he hit the game-winning shot in that game to give them a 108-106 victory. I like the over in this game, 216.5, Phoenix and Portland. Atlanta -1, Milwaukee -7.5, Portland and Phoenix over 216.5. All right, Vasu Vaddiparty here. Don't forget the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. Mention the podcast and receive 10% off your bill on Sundays for the NFL Sunday ticket. We'll be there tomorrow. We'll be there every Sunday for the next 4 weeks, doing a live broadcast, 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. on the West Coast. If you're in the Bay Area, want to come down, check out all the NFL Sunday ticket action. We'll have our podcast from 9:30 to 10, live with sound in the restaurant. You can get all your pregame prognostications, lines, overs, unders, fantasy football implications. We'll recap the trade deadline that took place last Tuesday. We'll do it all on the NFL preview as we have for Week 9. Week 9 of the NFL, we're about halfway through the season. 9:30 Pacific time, 12:30 Eastern. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. This is the VPartySports podcast brought to you by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio. Thanks, everybody, for getting up with me early this morning. Enjoy the NCAA. Enjoy the World Series tonight. The big games in college football. Some NBA. 14 games in the NHL if you choose some hockey. And send us any comments on Facebook and on YouTube. I'll post this on Instagram, so I'll look forward to the comments as well, too. Have a great day. Enjoy all your games. Good luck with all your wagers. And we will see you tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And also live at the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, 9:30 a.m. Pacific for the first half hour with sound. The rest of the show after kickoff, we'll do it online right here on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Vasu Vaddiparty here for the VPartySports podcast. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.